What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Partners in Prosperity.
Hey, everyone. So it's been a minute. I guess we should address that. It's been a minute.
I know. What we've been up to?
Everything and nothing at the same time.
For real. Lots of stuff. Lots of stuff.
But we're back. We're back.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. So in this episode, we'll be talking about family trusts.
Yes, we'll be talking about demystifying all of the myths and making it clear for people that are like, what are you talking about? And just why is it even worth it for you to get into that as a form of asset protection?
Yes. There's always arguments and stuff that comes out when there's not the proper stuff set up to determine what happens to your assets when you pass. So we're going to demystify all of that stuff for y'all. But first up, we're going to get into a little
ish and giggles.
Let's go.
All right. First of all, welcome back. I know we've been out for a minute and we're happy to be back. So let's get into our first ish and giggles of the new year.
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So your significant other, it could be your husband or your wife, quits their job because they have a dream. They want to be a rapper. And by the time they let you know, their mixtape is dropping next week. Now, you guys have bills, of course. They've never made any money as a rapper. You didn't even know they wanted to be a rapper. But you're a supportive spouse. So do you?
How?
Do you support, or what do you say?
I got lots of questions already, but so listen. Bills got to be paid, man. If this seems very spur of the moment, there's no support for this at all. Plain and simple. None.
I bet you haven't heard me rap yet.
No, I'm pretty sure.
Drop a beat real quick. Just drop a beat.
All right, hold on.
Or like singing. So it could be rapping or singing. Whoop, whoop. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch a tiger by its toe.
What? See? Nope. That ain't going to pay the bill. Sorry.
So what if it was like singing? What if it was like...
Okay, let's see you sing. Me. Yep.
No, so I don't think I could do the rap, but this is just about your significant other comes to you.
Yeah.
You want to support their dream, and they're like, babe, I want to rap. Now, listen, we're playing around. He knows I don't want to rap and I don't want to sing. So he's not worried about hurting my feelings. Or I know, because really, this person came out of nowhere. And
next week, she's going to be dropping a mixtape.
So where have I been while you've been recording stuff? Who is mixing it?
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, so he knows he's not going to hurt my feelings. But this is somebody that comes to you in earnest with wide eyes. Like, I quit my job. I know, I should have spoken to you, but my mixtape is dropping next week. It's not like I haven't been doing anything.
Let's go, shout it.
So what do you do?
Yeah, that's a hard no. That's a hard no.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that's a hard question.
No, it's a hard no. No, there's no questions at all. No questions at all. There hadn't been anything that's led me to believe that you can pull this off in such a short amount of time.
You don't even want to wait until the mixtape drops?
No, because the fact that you hadn't even showed it to me or that I hadn't heard it or anything, that lets me know that you don't even have confidence.
No, I want to surprise you.
No. See, you should know me by now, and we don't do that.
See, that's going to make it awkward because I dedicated the mixtape. So
that's very awkward.
Yeah,
that's very awkward. But no,
maybe I should have led with that.
Yeah, no. We wasted time.
I feel like, again, I say I just love Sean more than he loves me. So I feel like I would be like, all right, but here's what you got. You got 6 months. This mixtape you've done something on it. So clearly this is something that you want to do. You have 6 months before I see. And then we come up together with an amount of money that you can, because like Sean said, bills have to be paid.
Yeah, now you know where our savings went to this mixtape.
So then maybe you don't have 6 months, maybe you have 6 days, depending on where our savings did go. But after that, if we haven't hit the agreed upon stride that we agreed upon, then hopefully both of us, because we, both can agree that bills need to be paid and money has to come in and dreams don't pay bills all the time at first, we can agree that if we're not at this point by this time, then you should get something else that can pay bills. And then work on your side. That's why it's called a side hustle, right? We all work on our side hustle until we're able to make it our main thing. But I just think at the age of 40, with 5 children and a mortgage, that I just think that's irresponsible to just throw caution into the wind. But some would argue the age of 40 with 5 kids and a mortgage, that's the perfect time to do it, because you're not getting any younger. Life is passing you by. Yeah. So that's why I would say, okay, the fact that you did this knowing who you're married to means that you have a whole lot of will to get this done. So
you better.
Here is the amount of time that we're going to do it in. And if you hit these goals, then I got you.
Okay.
But if you don't hit these goals, my friend,
You are nicer than I am.
You can rap for me in our downtime.
No, man. No, I'm not saying you can't rap. I'm saying you can't quit doing whatever you're doing to make money.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
I just feel like if you give me some time to polish up that eeny, meeny, miny, mo one, sometimes you got to go back and dust off some of like the old stuff and make it new again.
The
So
nursery
eeny, meeny,
rhymes?
miny, mo, yeah.
Oh, no, I don't
Okay,
think so.
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. So clearly, again, you have to figure out which is the spouse that loves the other one more, and they're probably the one that will say yes. And then there's him.
Yeah, that's me. I'm a realist. I'm going to let you know, listen, this is not going to work. Let's stop wasting our time. We got money to make. Let's go.
And see, I'm a Pisces, so I wouldn't say that I'm not a realist. Just our realities don't always align with each other. Pisces, we're dreamers. Yeah.
Okay.
So
you are definitely a dreamer.
we're dreamers. So then we're going to support other people's dreams too. We understand what it's like to have a dream.
Into the ground. Into the ground.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a hard no for me. But I get that. Okay. So if I ever have aspirations.
I really thought he was going to say it was a hard question.
No, that's easy. Easy. But listen, now that I know that I can get my mixtape on, yeah, I'm going into the lab.
I would almost support you making a mixtape because I just want to hear what it's going to sound like.
No,
Okay? Because you wouldn't even you wouldn't even do like a Busta Rhyme for me. I came out and did something. So I really want to hear what yours is. You must be kind of holding it all in to just
I'm not holding
put
it
it
in
all
at
out
all.
of some one time.
No, there is nothing about that in me. That's why that's never even happened.
All right. Well,
Never even happened.
let us know.
Yes.
Would you support your rapper or your singer? If they went on American Idol, would you buy the plane ticket and fly all the way there?
Absolutely.
Knowing they couldn't sing just so Simon could tell them? Or would you pull them aside and be like, don't do it?
Now, it could be funny, and you could be setting them up and be like, yeah, go ahead, so that they can get laughed at. And
In
all of
today's
that.
world, that's
You could
still
get
a
something.
moneymaker.
That's what I'm saying.
There's no bad publicity.
For
So
sure.
that's not a setup. That's
sure.
like, okay, you go out there and then
Yeah.
we're going to spin the block after we get
Now,
some
that I
memes
support.
made.
That I support. That right there.
If they were on board with it, if
Yes.
they really thought they were Whitney Houston reincarnate and they got there with I have nothing.
I have nothing. I don't.
Yeah, that might be a problem. That's what I'm saying. So for me, it's fine for him to laugh and joke because he knows I'm not serious. Some people are really serious about these things
Yeah.
and you would still say no.
No, I'd say no. Yeah. You got to be real with your spouse. You got to be real with them. Yeah. Just say no. That's not going to work. Sorry. In the comfort of our home, but on a mixtape where
Dropping
we're
next
using
year.
resource. Nah.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, the mixtape.
Eeny, meeny, miny,
He's not
mo.
getting any of the proceeds.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. That mixtape gets a no.
Oh, all right, there you go. You want me to give you a little beat? And you want to add to it?
No, I don't. That's all I got. That's all I got.
All right. Well, let us know. Would you support your spouse or are you the one that just doesn't love your spouse?
Put it in the comments. All right, y'all. That was a pretty cool, interesting ish and giggles.
Yeah.
Let's get
You
down
learn
to
something
business.
new every day.
Yep. Let's get down to business. So, why is estate planning essential for building a legacy? So, without an estate plan, your family runs the risk of losing their assets, everything that you've worked for up to that point. You end up losing that to either probate or having the family members argue over it. It's a really good idea to have a trust set up, not just a will, but specifically a trust. And there's two different types of trust. We'll get into that later. But an example is, imagine you pass away, you have a home, you have some investments. What happens to those assets, right? And what you don't want to happen is for your family members to start arguing and fighting over those assets as far as what you would like to happen to them. So you create a trust, you put the assets inside of the trust, and then within the trust, you determine what you want to happen to those assets in the event of your passing.
For sure. And I think that around the time of losing a loved one, there's already stress and people are not at their best because they're grieving. And so just to kind of have to now sort through cooperating with family members who are also grieving and who may also have had a thought on how everything was going to be allocated and trying to figure it out is so much more convoluted and complicated if the person didn't already lay out exactly what they wanted and protect it from being contested by putting it in a trust. So I agree, but it also protects your wealth. So if you don't have a plan, then you face unnecessary taxes. When you are able to sit down with a professional and come up with a plan, they can let you know what's the best way to pass things on to loved ones so that you're not putting yourself in the line to get inheritance taxed or taxes deeply. You reduce the amount that can get attached to paying off your estate because when you pass away, creditors are able to come after your estate for things that they need paid. And then you also are able to increase the amount that's passed down to your family because you've set up all these things in place so that you have put the amount that you want for your family as the forefront of your estate planning goal. And the professional that's working with you is going to kind of show you how to make that happen so that you're not taxed as heavily. We're not saying that there's going to not be any taxes, but also that you are not having to deal with any type of creditors attacking any of your assets.
It also helps you to keep real estate in the family. So, we really don't want to waste the time and effort that your family members have put into obtaining this home. It's not easy to buy and purchase a home, especially these days. And so you want to keep that in the family. And so putting that real estate into the trust allows that to happen. It prevents anyone from coming in, suing you and taking that away. It also prevents probate. It literally determines what happens to the property in the event of your passing.
It enables you to set your vision for generational wealth. So aside from real estate, if we're just talking about, let's say, money that you have left over, you are able to dictate in a trust what you want that specific money to go for. So let's say you have money allocated for your grandchildren. You do not simply have to just kind of give them that money without any instructions on how you want it allocated. You are able to let the trustee know that this is what the money should go towards. So it helps you kind of even set that vision that college is important. And it is so important that I'm making sure that I put something aside for you to make sure you go to college. It lessens the likelihood that you have people that are not necessarily mature enough to know what to do with the money right off the bat and just blow it. And then later on wish that they would have done something with it that was more along with your lines, in line with your vision of what you would wanted it to be spent for.
Perfect. So having a trust also helps you out while you're alive as well. And where this comes into play is, say you're incapacitated, you're in the hospital, and you're trying to figure out, they're trying to get directives as far as how you would like to proceed, if you'd like to be resuscitated, if not, or anything along those lines. So you can specify all of that in your trust as well. That way, while you're alive but unable to make a decision, your trust will spell all of that information out for you as well. And it's the perfect time to have this conversation with your parents if they don't have anything set up. That way, you're not running into this issue in the event something happens to them. You already have that stuff spelled out. You've had the conversation with them, and you know exactly what they want. You can spell it out in the trust and go from there.
For sure. And I think you make a good point of that. Right now we're talking about setting up estate planning as it relates to kind of you setting it up for your estate so that your loved ones that you're leaving, passing down wealth or assets to, kind of know what you want. But it also helps with your parents' children, which is you and your siblings, to be able to have directives and know exactly what your parents want upon them leaving this earth and how they want things allocated, but also how they would like, medical decisions to be dictated and things along those lines. So as you're kind of hearing this information, definitely think of how it relates to you and you building generational wealth, but also it is, like Sean said, a good time to kind of have that conversation with your parents to see where their mind is at, and it would lessen the burden on you and your siblings of having to make those decisions when you're already in a grieving process for life things that are going to unfortunately happen to all of us.
Yes. And so lastly, it helps you to create a long-lasting legacy as well. So this is kind of the start or one of the ways that you can start your generational wealth is by placing your assets in a trust. They stay in the trust forever, pretty much until something happens and you want to take the stuff out of the trust. But this is definitely a way to grow your legacy, to secure your legacy, and make sure that everything happens according to how you plan it.
For sure. And so one thing we'll get into before we get into the nuts and bolts of the trust is misconceptions. Why people are like, I don't really need that. I'm going to go ahead and bypass this one because this is not really for me. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that people think unless you're millionaires, you really don't have a need for it, right? Because unless you have yachts and castles and, what is it, the Scrooge McDuck vault of gold that he swims in, unless you have all of that, what do I really need a trust for? I got my cat and my Prada boots. You know what I mean?
And so, your mixtape.
Oh yeah, the proceeds from my mistake, which you will not see because you're still making jokes. So anyway, The biggest misconception is that it's just for the ultra rich and your assets really don't qualify for it because you don't have a lot of assets. So I would say that for as much as you have, you've still worked hard for it. You still accumulated it with your hard work and your smart decision making. So you want to make sure that it's allocated in the way that you see fit. So what a trust does is make sure that it can, you can have your voice heard and have your instructions followed with any amount of wealth or any amount of assets that you have to your heirs or your loved ones or endowments, anything that you want to do. It's that final bit of instructions on money and assets that you worked hard for to make sure that it is allocated the way you want.
Yeah.
So before we go into the nuts and bolts of trust, we're going to go into the misconceptions that people have about a trust. And this is going to stop you from stopping this specific video and saying, this is not for me. I don't have a mega mansion, a yacht. I don't have a vault full of gold coins. Why do I need a trust? And so we're going to go over kind of what people tell themselves to convince themselves that they really don't need a trust. The first thing I would say is just thinking that if you don't have that big amount of wealth, there's really no need to kind of go into that stringent of asset protection. And I would say that a trust is going to make it airtight no matter how many things you put in your trust, whatever you put in. It could be a set of dishes that means something to you. It could be an old vintage car. It could be money. It could be, insurance money, it could be real estate. Whatever it is you worked hard for and it's yours and you want it to be allocated according to your wishes. And all a trust does is make sure that you don't have any issues later on down the line with people following those rules that you've established, because probate is real. And it will create a whole bunch of unnecessary drama and money for you if you don't make sure that you plan your allocations of assets correctly.
Absolutely.
So what is probate?
Yes.
And why does it suck?
Yes, it sucks big time. So probate is the legal process for distributing your assets after you pass, right? It's expensive, it's time consuming, and you really want your family to avoid all of that, especially the attorney's fees and everything. So a trust allows your family to avoid those headaches. You put everything in the trust, it literally spells everything out, and it avoids probate.
For sure. It's the contested part of wills that give us the most trouble, isn't it? It's the one that auntie has one, brother has one, grandma's other illegitimate child has one, and everybody comes and says, this is it, I'm contesting theirs. And the only person that wins in that situation is the attorneys, because a good chunk of whatever assets that you're arguing over now has to go towards the attorney so that they can sort it all out. The court is not going to release anything until it's all sorted out and an agreement is made. And so all of those assets that grandma worked hard for have now been divvied up because we have to pay a system to tell us what to do with it. And all that could have been avoided if we paid the amount of money to spell it out right. And so that leads me into the last misconception that we'll go over. And that's just that it is too much money. It is cost prohibitive. If I only have $50,000, why am I going to pay $5,000 to $7,000 to get an attorney to draw up a trust? And I would say that the biggest argument to that, or the biggest comeback to that argument, is if you only have $50,000, $5,000 to $7,000 is a little over 10%, and I can assure you that much more of that will be eaten up in probate
100%.
Should you have to argue with family members. Not to mention the fissures that get erected in family relationships because we're arguing over how things should be allocated. I know that not all families are like that, but I will say a good amount of families' grief just doesn't bring out the best in them. So when they are now emotionally exhausted and they're trying to kind of make their voice heard about what they want to happen with loved ones' assets, it's harder, and you have to pay somebody who really doesn't care about anything except making sure your check clears to allocate them, and it's just not worth it. So that amount that you have to pay, that one-time amount that you have to pay, and maybe once a year, I think every couple of years our attorney goes through ours and redoes it, and it's
to see if there's any updates.
Definitely just a small percentage of what the initial investment is that you make for the trust. It's so much worth it to save money and heartache in the end.
Now I know one thing that's going in the trust, that mixtape. Can I get?
We should have a drinking game, and everybody should take a shot every time Sean says mixtape.
Mixtape.
Not if you're under 21. You definitely shouldn't do that if you're under 21.
Definitely not.
Now that we've gone over the misconceptions of trust, Sean is going to get into kind of what is a trust, the definition, and then later on I'll talk about the different types that there are.
Yep. So what's a family trust? So a trust is like a box. and you put all of your belongings or your assets into the box. So your home, your vehicles, any investments, anything along those lines you want to put inside the trust that makes sure, and this ensures that those assets gets divvied up or assigned to the people that you want it to go to when you're no longer around. It's also again helpful for when you're alive as well. It determines any medical decisions or directives that you may have as well. And the person in charge of your trust is called the trustee. So the trustee is the entity that will carry out your trust in the event that you're no longer here. One thing to keep in mind is that you want to have only one trust. You can only have one trust when you're married. But if you're engaged or dating or anything along those lines and you're not technically married, you'll have to have two separate trusts. So there are some key components of the trust, which would be creating the box, and the grantor is you who decides what to put in the box, right? So key components of a trust, you want to create the box first, right? So the box is created by you, the grantor. That is the actual trust where you're dumping all of your assets into. And then you want to make sure you choose the proper helper or entity, which would be the trustee. That could be an attorney, a law firm, or anything along those lines that would carry those wishes out for you in the event that you pass.
For sure. And then the people that get the assets or get the stuff that's passed on to, what are they called?
Those are the beneficiaries.
Okay, perfect. And I think that because this just came up when we were redoing some things in our trust, you had asked, like, okay, what if you guys go out of business? What if this person dies? What if this law firm, what if the person gets disbarred? So do you want to touch on that?
Yes.
Because that's something that we were just kind of talking to our estate planning attorney about.
So those firms who handle trusts, they have succession plans in place so that in the event that who's ever running the law firm or the attorney, in the event that they pass, they have someone else that will carry out your wishes as well as the executor of your trust.
For sure. So what they told us is that your first step is just kind of picking somebody, and then we have to, with our professional plan, have succession plans for somebody to take over all of the trust that we're managing should something happen to us and we become incapacitated, no longer in business, or we're no longer here. So that is something that any professional that you choose to oversee your trust has already thought and put into action on their side as well. So one less thing you have to worry about. So now that Sean's kind of talked to you about what is a trust and what are kind of the key components of a trust, and when we say box, obviously we mean proverbial box. We don't want you to put your house in a big box and then throw all the cars. Yeah, we're not talking about that. So I'm sure that you guys assume that, but I just want to say we're just kind of using that as a metaphorical like vault that you keep everything in that's legally protected. That's what we mean. And so for the purpose of this video, we're just going to really spend time on the two main trusts, and I'll touch lightly on the other trusts that we have. So the main two that we're going to talk about are the revocable and irrevocable. So the revocable is called a living trust, and it's called that because it's flexible. While you are living, you are able to change it, cancel it, add things, subtract things. You're able to kind of be more flexible. Like the name would suggest, it is revocable, which means you can revoke kind of the first instructions that you put on it and change it. However, with the revocable trust, once you pass away, everything goes on lockdown and it becomes set in stone. So while you're alive, you are able, a revocable trust, to move and shift and change things. But the moment that you become either incapacitated or no longer with us, then that everything that your last set of instructions become kind of set in stone. So that's the revocable trust. So you can set up the revocable trust, you can put your house in it. However, if you decide later on to sell your house, you can take it out because it's in a revocable trust. You're able to take possession of it again and sell it and not have to kind of worry about dealing with it being in a trust, in its own entity. Then we have the irrevocable trust. So like the name suggests, you are not able to change anything. So you put it in, it becomes kind of its own entity type thing. So if you have a home and you put it in a trust, it is no longer your home now. The trust owns the home. So should you want to sell your house, it's something a little bit different paperwork wise because the trust is now selling the home, not you.
Right.
The irrevocable trust is helpful for asset protection as well, because if somebody wants to go after you or wants to kind of see what your assets are, the home is not technically your asset. It's the asset of the trust. You are a beneficiary of the trust. We can get all down into the nitty gritty of how that works, and perhaps we'll do that in another video. For the purposes of this and just getting you guys to kind of understand what the two are and getting you guys to start the conversation about asset protection and planning in that way, we'll just say that the revocable trust is flexible, movable until you die. And the irrevocable trust, once you put it in there, it's kind of set in stone.
And the one thing I just wanted to add to that, as far as protecting your assets, is if someone's coming to sue you, if your assets are in a trust, the trust shields those assets from becoming discoverable, because what they're going to do is they're going to do an asset discovery, and they're going to look up stuff that's under your name, under your social, all of that type of information that's going to tie you to these assets that they're trying to find that you have, in order to force you to liquidate them, to pay off whatever they're trying to sue you for. The trust avoids all of that and shields those assets, so that it'll just say the trust name and it won't have your name on there at all. So no one would know that you actually own these assets.
Yes, because for all intents and purposes, you don't own those assets. The trust owns those assets.
Yes.
And so what we found out too, last year or a couple years ago, going through just our own family stuff that happens when you have aging parents and grandparents, is that you have to check the laws in your state. But in this specific state that we are speaking of, Washington state, the state will come in and help you with long-term care, with any of those type things you need as you're aging, and you need I think it was like memory care and a nurse assistant, because at the time my grandmother was living on her own and needing all of that. The state will come in and help you if you've already liquidated all of your assets and put all of your money towards helping yourself. Now that makes it kind of hard for asset protection, right? Like on one hand, you would say, well, it's hers. She should be able to liquidate it and do whatever she wants. But on the other hand, you would say, it's hers. She worked hard for it. How nice would it have been for her to pass it down to her family? Had the home been in a trust, the state would not have been able to come in and insist that she liquidate everything she owned, pay that towards her bills, and then they would come in. They would have just come in and done that. Now, you would need to check the laws of your states again, like I said, because every state can be different. But I do know for this state, we couldn't react and say, oh, okay, that's what the law says. Let's hurry up and put it in a trust.
It's too late.
Because for the laws of that state, the home would have had to be in a trust for at least 2 years for them to not attach it to her assets. So that's why I say this is not just for wealth protection for yourself. It's also for you to kind of talk with aging parents, talk with aging grandparents, to try to set them up with a plan as well. If it is in a trust, like Sean said, it is undiscoverable, because for all intents and purposes, you don't own it. Your trust owns it. It grants you a lot of protections. So then the next one we'll talk about very, very briefly is called the testamentary trust. And it only goes into effect after you pass away. And it's really a trust where you're going to have allocations over time. So you set up a trust because in the event you should leave your kid when they are, between the ages of maybe 12 and 30, you can have this trust set up so that you can allocate money over time. They get this amount of money at this age. They get this amount of money at this age. That's more something that's ongoing. You can also add different reasonings. They get this amount of money if they're this age, or unless they're buying a house. They get this amount of money this age, or unless, a health condition comes up. But that's a trust that you set up that over time will kind of help you allocate things. It's not just kind of one lump sum of allocation. It's over time allocation. Then we have like the special needs trust. And in the business that we work in, this is important for parents when we're talking with them about estate planning. It's going to support your loved one that has a special needs need, I should say. So that could be, ongoing therapy. That could mean to live in a home one day with roommates or an assisted living facility, but it's not going to affect their ability to get Social Security or some of those other things that come in. Right. So there's ways that you can set up where money can kind of supplement anything else they get without affecting what they get. And then there's the charitable trust. And those are things that you are going to set up to create endowments, to give to charity. These are things that it's going to be very specific, the specific charities that you want to give and the stipulations upon how you want to give it. So like I said, we won't go into those. Maybe we'll do one where we're not kind of giving a blanket overview of trust and doing like a deep dive into trust. But for purposes of just starting out and for purposes of not overwhelming you, think revocable, think irrevocable trusts. And when you sit down with somebody that is going to talk you through it, an estate planning attorney, they can talk to you about what the best ones are for you. But like Sean said, it's important to note, and because we found this out, because we created trust prior to getting married, even though we were buying a house together, that you cannot have a joint trust unless you are married. Because we were not married when we bought our first house, we had to have everything in separate trust and then join it together once we got married again. However, that's fine because we do encourage you to sit down with your estate planning attorney at least every couple years. Things may change. That brother that you had set to be the beneficiary, maybe things have changed in life and you need to kind of tweak. As your kids get older, you may want to tweak things. So that's totally fine because it should be something that you're revisiting every couple of years anyway. But just know that if you guys are partnered, but not legally married, it would be something that you guys would have to do separate and then later on join should you become married.
Yes. So next we'll talk about the roles of the trustee and the beneficiary. So the trustee, you want to think of them as like the manager or the guardian of the trust. So they carry out your wishes. They make sure that everything is airtight, that no one can access your assets, and that everything in the trust is buttoned up and tight. The beneficiary, these are the people who obviously it's in the name, they benefit from the trust. So these are the ones who the wishes that are carried out in the trust benefit from that as well. So that would be anyone from your family members or whoever you named as the trust, as the beneficiaries. They're the ones who receive the money or the assets that you have inside of the trust as well. And so how they work together is the trustee is kind of like the caretaker, and they're taking care of the beneficiaries on behalf of the trust.
For sure. That's why it's very important that you have a great working relationship with your trustee so that they know exactly and explicitly what you want done and how you want it done. And if you remember when we first did our documents, it was a good 100, 200 pages because they were asking specifics about everything. So when you first start it, it is going to be a lot, daunting. But after that, you're just revisiting. If nothing changes, you leave it alone. But the first initial kind of setup is a lot because you want to make sure that your trustee understands, very, very specifically how you want things allocated, and so that your beneficiaries can make sure that they get things exactly how you wanted it.
And the initial, not the initial discovery, but the initial filling out of all that paperwork. It's very, very detailed from what song you want played at your funeral to do you want to be buried or cremated. It lists every single thing that comes up. So that's something that you guys want to think about when you're setting this up. Is a lot of
thought goes into it.
Yeah, a lot goes into it. It's not just putting assets into the trust. It's also thinking about what you want your funeral to look like, what you want your health decisions to be. Who do you want to get everything? Like it's all encompassing. It really is.
For sure. And I think that some people, we hadn't had the conversation, or by the time they got the letter, we hadn't had the conversation with them yet. So they were like, oh, so we're watching all of your kids should you pass away. And we're like, yeah, we've been meaning to have that conversation with you. So not only do you make these decisions, if you have a good, I don't know if everybody does it, but our trust attorney then sent letters to everybody that was named in different parts and said, hey, you need to know that this is what's going on. Now, some people we had to have the conversation with. It was just a lot of people to have different conversations. Some we were like, well, yeah, didn't you expect that you would have all their kids? Like, you're their auntie. But they will let everybody in the trust know, hey, this is what this person is allocated for you to do, to perform, so that everybody's kind of knowing. So if they hit them back and say, no, I don't want to do that, they will sit down with you and say, hey, this person has reached out to us. They are not in a position to do it. You need to figure this out. So in the beginning, it's a lot. But like I said, then after that, it's just maintenance, and we've all had that family member that we've buried that took care of everything. And it was just such a weight lifted off of our shoulders that we didn't have to guess and make sure we're doing right by them because we were able to follow their instructions to a T. We don't necessarily want to think about our mortality and leaving people that we love, but we do want to think about the peace and the easiness that it would be for them to kind of carry out our wishes by making it very, very known what we want.
Yep. And just keep in mind that you're going to have to come up with 3 different sets of beneficiaries. You'll have your primary, your secondary, and then your tertiary in case anything happens to the first 2 beneficiaries as well.
And you'll revisit that every couple of years to make sure that's still something that you want to do.
Yep.
Okay, so now that we've gone into why you should create a trust, the different types of trust, the misconceptions about a trust, I think that we have you on board enough to maybe be like, we should create a trust.
Yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, so let's talk about what you would do first, right?
How to start.
How do you start? How do you get started? I think the first thing would just be to categorize and list your assets. So there would be assets that you have plans with, right now while you're living, and maybe you don't necessarily want to put them into an irrevocable trust. Maybe you have those in a revocable trust. And then there's assets where you know that you just want this to be for kind of passing along. You kind of decide what you have and what you want to do with it. So I would say the first step would just to be categorize what you have. Bank accounts, life insurance policies, 401ks, that will kind of you feel like will run the span of your lifetime and beyond. Anything that you feel like that's of value that you want input in to how your loved ones will get it, or want input into who gets it. I would say the first step would just be to list everything.
Yes.
And just making sure kind of what you have.
That's a good way to find out what your assets are, what you want to decide to put in there, not put in there, and everything along those lines. The next thing you want to do after you've figured out your assets and what you want to put in it is choose a trustee. Now, the trustee is kind of like the caretaker of the trust, right? And so this could be yourself while you're alive, or you can pick a professional to do it. So an attorney, a bank, or actual entity to take care of that for you. The trustee ensures that everything operates as you intended. So choosing someone or an entity that's reliable and trustworthy is very, very important.
For sure. And so then once you choose a trustee that you trust, then you're going to work on the paperwork. And that's kind of the thing that we implied in the beginning. Well, not implied, we fully stated that's a lot in the beginning. So we want to say that so that you don't go in with one expectation and then kind of withdraw and say, this is too much. If you go in knowing there's a lot of decisions I'm going to have to make, there's a lot of instructions I'm going to have to give, but it's a one-time thing, and then I can go in and kind of maintain it and change it as needed, then you're less likely to just kind of scrap the whole project altogether because you didn't know.
Yeah.
Right? So sitting down, if you have a good trust attorney, they're going to want to know all of the details. They're going to want to know everything so that they feel like they can allocate and make sure all of your wishes are carried out to the T. So that's what the documentation is going to be. It's going to be a legal document that outlines how you want everything to go. And like Sean said, they can even get as detailed as what you want done in your funeral, how you would like to be buried, if you want to be buried, all of those things. And so think of it as, this is not fun to come face to face with the fact that I won't be here one day, but think of it as how nice it will be for your loved ones to not have to guess about these things.
Yes.
So that's the third thing that you're going to do in setting up a trust.
And the last thing you want to do is fund the trust. So now that you have it set up, you've picked your trustee, you got your documents and stuff in order and everything filled out, it's set up. Now it's time to actually fund it and put things into it. And so that's a process called funding the trust, where you would go to, say you wanted to put your house in the trust. On the deed, you would go and update the deed from your name to the name of the trust. And so that is how all of your assets that you put into the trust ends up becoming non-discoverable, is because it has the trust name listed on it instead of your actual name. So this would be in the event that you want any bank accounts or anything that you wanted to put in there, you would take your name off of it and put blah, 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 family trust, or whatever you ended up naming your trust. If the assets aren't transferable, then they won't be, if you don't transfer the assets into the trust, then they're not covered by the trust, obviously.
For sure. And that's what we're going to get into, I think, in our next segment, is just kind of pitfalls. So just making sure that as you guys are attaining assets, that you are also asking yourself, is this something that you want to be in the trust? So since we set up our trust, or in the time between us setting up our trust and now, there's been other assets that we've gotten. So always kind of making sure that we are doing the process to transfer those into the trust, because like Sean said, just by virtue of you having a trust doesn't automatically put all of your assets in the trust. Unless you go through this procedure for every asset that you want to be under the trust, it will not be. And so you will be surprised to find that maybe something isn't covered under the trust, and that could, provide some drama for you later on.
Yes. And I think it goes without saying, but you can only fund the trust with things that you own. So you can't go and take somebody's house, your grandma's house or something that's not in your name, and put it in the trust.
They actually need to see the deed with your name on it
Right.
in order for them to transfer it into your trust. So there is some paperwork. It's a lengthy paperwork process, but this is wealth management. It's asset protection. It's how you build generational wealth by not having your kids start in the dirt with nothing, especially if you have things that you've accumulated. It's each generation generation kind of building on top of what the generation before them accumulated. And so it is worthwhile to kind of go through the processes and make sure that you are protecting your kids this way. So they start up a little bit higher, a little bit more ahead of the game than you started with. And then they know, because now they've seen you do it, to kind of set their kids up a little bit more ahead of the game than they started with. And that's really how your generation and your legacy kind of builds, because you're giving each generation a little bit more of a head start than they had in the generation before.
Yes, and this also allows you to, when it comes to dictating what's in the trust and what happens, it allows you to put certain stipulations on it as well. So say your kids, say they get married later, you have an inheritance or something for them, you can stipulate in there that whoever they get married to does not get any part of the trust unless this certain thing is met, or you can say that they don't get access to it at all. You can literally dictate what happens to everything at every granular level going forward.
For sure. So call me crazy, call me old school. That was important for us because we have 2 boys, but we have 3 girls. So it was important to us that none of our girls were able to get married and then lose everything that we've left to them in a marriage by having to split it 50-50. So you are able, talk with your attorney. Like I said, laws are different in each state, even down to when you get married and divorced. They have different laws in each state. But what's important to us to dictate that our legacy doesn't get interrupted by a bad marriage. So that anybody that their spouse brings in, they will know that they will have access to maybe things that they built together, but they will not have access, should they not be married to one of our children, to anything that we've left behind for our kids. So that was important to us.
Yes. And even outside of that, I mean, the people that you make beneficiaries, well, for the sake of this example, we'll say it's your kids. So you know your kids, right? You know who's the spendthrift. You know who the saver is, you know who makes, logical, smart decisions and so on. So you can also put stipulations in your trust as well to say, hey, my kid who I know is the spendthrift, they can't get access to this until they're 35 because, they've matured enough. Or you could even put stipulations on it and say, hey, they can't get access to this until they achieve this certain level or this certain goal or anything along those lines that you want to specify that they have to meet in order to get this asset.
And I think we talked about that in the beginning, just making sure that your voice is heard generationally, right? To making sure that you are attaching what you are leaving behind to the reward or to the carrying out of those things that you value, like graduating, like starting a business, like, keeping their health intact. It's a way for you kind of to make sure that your money is where your mouth is. And if these things are important to you, this is kind of what you can put behind. So in the last segment, we will talk about pitfalls to avoid.
So in segment 4, we're going to talk about some common pitfalls and how to avoid them, right? And so the trust, creating the trust is a great way to shield your assets and everything, but you also want to make sure that it's set up the right way, that you pick the right person to do it, to make sure that everything is carried out properly.
Yeah, so the first thing we'll talk about, I think we touched on it in the previous segment, is just failing to fund the trust. Like Sean said, you can have the trust set up unless you go through the extra step of giving your trustee the deed so that they're able to transfer it properly into the trust. Your assets will not be in there. So just by virtue of you having the trust, it's not like, let's say at Best Buy, we have this insurance, right? We have this Best Buy family insurance. So we go to Best Buy, by virtue of us having this insurance, anything that we buy from Best Buy is automatically covered under the insurance. We don't have to do any extra paperwork, check any boxes. It just kind of covers us for everything.
Shout out to Best Buy.
The trust is not Best Buy. You have to load everything, or I should say transfer everything that you want in your trust. There's a manual effort that needs to be made to make sure that you transfer it. So let's say you guys get married and you're renting. You create a trust, just a family trust, because you've watched our episode and you know how important that is in wealth management and building generational wealth. And then you guys buy a house maybe 5 years later. Let's say you never do the paperwork to put it in the trust. Something happens to you, and while you have other assets in your trust, your home is still not stipulated on how you want that to be broken up because it was never put in the trust. Now you have to go through probate to figure out what's going to happen next with the home. So just make sure that as you are accumulating assets, as we know you will, that you are doing that last step and making sure that they are transferred or funded to the trust.
Yes. The next thing you want to ensure is that you choose the right or the best available trustee. Say you chose your sister or a sibling to be your trustee. and they end up not being good with money. They could mishandle the trust. They could not fill out some sort of paperwork and make your assets discoverable. You really, really want to make sure that you pick someone who is trustworthy, reliable, that is going to do something, or that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. But also, you also want to pick someone who's not emotionally tied to the assets and stuff as well. That way, there's not any, that avoids the chance of there being any kind of emotional decisions coming in, or anything along those lines where they may feel salty that they're not a beneficiary or anything along those lines. So make sure you choose someone that's trustworthy, makes good decisions, and they aren't tied to the assets in any sort of way.
For sure. And I would say when you're choosing that trustee, a lot of conversations need to happen so that they kind of, as you're evolving and as life is evolving, they're very clear with what you want. And you get that feeling that they have the emotional maturity and the financial maturity to kind of carry out your wishes as you want. So yeah, choosing who's going to oversee everything that you've worked hard for, and make sure that the people that you've worked hard for, yeah, I could see that being an important one. And I would say our last one is just not revisiting and periodically updating it. As we said before, that first initial paperwork sprint that happens to get it up and running is a lot. So I can see how people would put it off, and it would be aversive, and they'd be like, I don't want to go through that again. Maybe next year, next year. And then time goes on, and it doesn't correctly reflect when you pass away. It doesn't correctly reflect where you were in your life or what your new wishes were, because you never went back and kind of periodically updated it. We expect that things will change. We expect that situations will change. You will accumulate more. You will have different needs. At one time where you may have wanted it to go to your children, that was 20 years ago. Now you have grandchildren, and you want to make sure they're taken care of. Just make sure that you are periodically updating it. Everybody's trust attorney is different. Some may hit you up at that 2-year mark and say, hey, it's time for it. Let's get something on the calendar. We need to sit down and go over it again. And some may not. That might be something that you need to proactively reach out to them and say, hey, can we make some changes? Either way, it's your things. It's your hard work. It's up to you to kind of make sure that you are periodically going in and making sure that what you have listed is something that still correctly reflects kind of where you are in life, as far as assets, as far as who is it benefiting, as far as who is kind of overseeing it. All right, loved ones, that's a wrap on today's episode. So the takeaway is that if you have been putting off, or if it never even occurred to you to create a family trust, I hope that we have explained it in such a way, as far as the benefits, as far as the steps, as far as what to look out for, that it makes you want to go and start the process.
Yeah. So it's very, very important for you guys to understand that the family trust is not just for the wealthy, it's for the everyday person as well. It allows you to protect your hard work and ensure your family's future. We also want to make sure that it connects your efforts of today to your family's stability and opportunities for tomorrow.
For sure. And here's the thing. We really just don't want you to let procrastination stop you from going and setting this up and then causing your family down the line to, face unnecessary challenges. So our call to action for you, we always say that although we give you lots of information about something, we would rather you take one thing out of it and do it than just try to tell yourself that in a year you'll do all of it together. Yeah. So if it's the one thing that you do that is easy for you to do right now, we would say just reach out to a family trust attorney, talk to them, ask them what the cost is, ask them what the first steps would be for you to do it. Just do that. No obligation after that, but just start the conversation. Once you start that conversation, then you can kind of figure out what the next best second step is. But our call to action for you today would just be to reach out and just start the process of doing it.
Yep. And the last thing, in addition to that, is once you have all of this done, you've got all this information, you followed the steps, you've chosen your trustee. You listed your assets, you've chosen your trustee, you've done the paperwork, you've funded your trust. You may be the first person in your family to do this.
Yeah.
Please have this conversation with your other family members. It's kind of like, if you're the first person to go to college, then there's other people who end up doing it because they've seen it done before.
Yeah, so first to buy a house, same thing.
Yeah. So this is kind of along those same lines, to where once you've gone through this and have it set up and everything, please have this conversation with your family members, friends, and make sure that they're doing the same thing, or at least exposed to it.
For sure. And so this concludes our episode of Family Trust and demystifying kind of what it is and what to do. Please hit the subscribe button so that you are notified when we do our episodes. Please like this episode so that it moves it up higher in the algorithm and we can educate more people on the benefits of building a trust, specifically in this episode, but just all of the tenets of building generational wealth. And we will see you in the next episode.
Yes, sir.
Between then, we hope that you stay unified in purpose, unstoppable as a team, and unconditional above all.
Let's go.
Make it